the lullaby of Broadway.
With the opening of the American Theater and a production called The Prodigal Daughter in 1893, the legitimate theater had reached Times Square. It was the birth of what the world now calls Broadway.
Every time I come back and I walk into a theater, I'm at home. My parents took me to see Oklahoma for the first time. It was the greatest experiences I ever had. So that's when I started to think about it.
It was playwriting, and it turned into one of the most critically and financially successful writing careers Broadway has ever known.
How am I ever going to play for the Yankees with a name like Eugene Morris Jerome? You got to be a Tony, or Frankie, or Joe.
I've written 26 plays or 27, and I've only written about 7 or 8 that may be sort of biographical. You don't have to experience personally what the people are going through that you're writing about if you observe them well enough throughout life.
Stanley?
Great observers who make great plays are a tradition of Broadway.
My entire experience.
Sure.
You are not going bowling. Why did you do
Broadway is Tennessee Williams and plays such as A Streetcar Named Desire.
When we first met, me and you thought I was common. How right you was, baby. I was common as dirt.
Broadway is August Wilson and plays such as Fences.
And don't you go through life worried if somebody likes you or not. You best make sure that they are doing right by you.
Broadway is Arthur Miller and plays such as Death of a Salesman.
When I saw Death of a Salesman, I made this connection with my father. I remember seeing the play through a veil of tears. I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, why am I so affected by this play? But it was part of that thing that a great playwright reveals to you what you are, really.
5-time Tony winner, Julie Harris.
Such love was the limit of my dream. It was the focus of my prayer.
She triumphed as Emily Dickinson in The Belle of Amherst.
As if I breathed superior air.
If you really are thrilled by the content of what you're doing, it carries you. And I was.
Hold your parents tenderly, for the world will seem a strange and lonely place when they're gone.
I recall that last 20 minutes of the play as riding on a magic carpet, and I thought maybe the curtain will never come down, maybe this will never end. I'll just be saying these wonderful things forever and ever.
Why do we cling to this body, this little frame? Why are we afraid to let go? Or sad when others do? If my own machinery should get slightly out of gear, please, someone stop the wheel, for I know that with belts and bands of gold, I shall whiz triumphant.
We begin. It's the ritual, because that's what theater is, a ritual. Everybody comes in, sits in the seats, the curtain goes up, we portray something based on life that's bigger than life.
With the success of the Will Rogers Follies, director Tommy Tune once again proved himself a principal caretaker of that grandest of traditions, the big, bold, and splashy Broadway music.
Whether you do it through your life or through your art, you're spreading joy, because we all have sorrow and loss and depression, and all of these cynicism has worked its way into our culture in serious ways. For those of us that still have a little bit of the joy, it's our duty, I think, to spread it around and share it.
Come enchanted evening, when you find your true love, when you feel her call you across a crowded room.
The joy of the songs of Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe, Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, and the Gershwins filled the Broadway musical stage for decades.
Oh, how I need someone to
Even now, Crazy for You, a new musical based on the Gershwins' 1930 Girl Crazy, is one of the biggest hits on Broadway. It's fitting that the legendary Gershwins should be playing here at the Schubert Theater, the home of so many great shows over the years. It was here in 1975 that a musical called A Chorus Line opened. It would become the longest running show in Broadway history. By the time A Chorus Line arrived on Broadway, a revolution had taken place in the American musical.
Here's to the girls who play white. Aren't they too much? Meanwhile, they're clutching a copy of life just to keep in touch.
Recently revived by the original cast as a benefit for Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, Stephen Sondheim's 1970 Company changed the musical theater forever. New York Times theater critic Frank Rich.
Company was one of the avatars of the idea of a concept musical. A musical that wouldn't have a conventional story with a beginning and middle and end, would be brittle in tone perhaps, and would deal with a theme. In this case, the theme being marriage in New York and connecting to other people.
We get ready for the road. We get ready for the road.
Broadway is beginning to catch up with the rest of American culture.
George C. Wolfe is the director of Broadway's Jelly's Last Jam, a musical that tackles, among other themes, racism and self-hatred.
We're re-examining American culture in a way that I don't think we have done since the 20s in many respects. I think there's an active search for the American voice, for the American character, for the American vision in a way.
George C. Wolfe is also the director of this year's Pulitzer Prize-winning drama, Angels in America.
Lesion number 1. Look at the wine-dark kiss of the angel of death.
Angels in America is a play about love and loathing and AIDS in an America on the edge of dignity or destruction.
But it ain't, Henry, and it isn't hemophilia.
Angels in America is where Broadway has arrived after 100 years.
Say, Roy Cohn, you are a homosexual, and I will proceed systematically to destroy your reputation and your practice and your career in New York State.
Theater is always a place where you explore ideas. And I think there's also sort of a very fundamental spiritual ritual base where you really have people sitting in the dark listening to people in light talk about being human.
Forgive me if I'm frightened. I never see strangers and hardly know what I say.
Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue.
Something familiar, something peculiar, something for everyone, a comedy tonight. Something.
In its 100 years, Broadway has become more than a few streets and buildings in the heart of New York. Much more. It is a living symbol of who we are and who we can become. So next time you're there, or anywhere that puts you in mind of it, stop and listen. And you may hear the sounds that make the lullaby of Broadway.